Hey, everybody, what is going on? Welcome to the NFL. What is it, week 12? Are we in week 12 already? Is it
13?
It's 13? Week 12 is, oh my God. See, we are at that point now where I just don't know when the hell it is. Like, it's sometime in November. I'm tired. I keep looking at these offensive lines and they all suck. And it's just crazy. It's week 13 though, everybody. Of course, this is the DFS Pick 6. RotoWorld's DFS Pick 6, produced by RotoGrinders. I'm Eric Crane, joined by two of the legends of the DFS industry. We have Rich Rebar. We got Evan Silva. Rich, how we doing, buddy? The Julio Whisperer.
We're doing good, man. Listen, Julio was well needed because, we waxed politically for about those games on Thursday for about 45 minutes, and Jesus, we couldn't have got more shit wrong.
Hey, but the thing is, though, you played Julio, it didn't matter.
Yeah, that Thursday slate, man, I took it bad. I mean, I might have won like 10% of what I put in on Thursday, and it was just a real dog 3 days because, as an analyst, we spent a lot of time putting the work in, and those are, anytime like you look at something like me and Evan, we break down all the games, and usually, 2 or 3 games are off the beaten path when you look at mentality. It just happened that those 3 were all those island games, and the rest of Sunday, I was pretty good. Sunday made up for it a lot, but man, that Thursday was bad.
Yeah, Thursday, Evan, it was
burn.
Yeah, it was. As soon as Kyle Rudolph was going off, I knew it was probably wasn't going to be a great Thursday. Yeah, it was one of the worst Thanksgiving slates I've ever had, but of course we made up for it on the weekend. Evan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I mean, I didn't lose my butt on Thanksgiving because I had a lot of Rudolph, I had a lot of Keenan Allen, I had a lot of Chargers D, but I didn't do well on Sunday, unfortunately. After our show, I had planned to go all in on Julio. By the end of the week, I talked myself into going all in on T.Y. Hilton. So, that was, at the total opposite end of the spectrum. But, that's how this stuff goes. And, I didn't, I've learned, bankroll management and, to some extent. And so I didn't lose at all. This was a week, though, so far that has been there's been a lot of more Browns hindsight discussion, which I think is interesting. It'll pop up every once in a while, like big media will really start talking about the Browns. I don't know if these guys think that do they make their own decisions in their own life in hindsight? Because if everybody had the benefit of hindsight, we'd all be millionaires like Crane. This notion that the Browns passed on all these quarterbacks is actually not even really true. They were trying to build their team and they traded down to try to get more picks because they did self-reflection and looked at their team and said, we need more good players. We're not really in a position to invest a really high pick on a quarterback. We need more good players on our team. And are all these people that rip the Browns in hindsight, do they go back to every draft and look at how they should look at every single sport and just spend their lives ripping all the teams that, passed on Albert Pujols, who I think was a 13th round pick of the Cardinals.
He was later than that.
Okay, yeah. So it was like, a 17th round pick or whatever. And they should just rip the Cardinals because the Cardinals passed on them 16 times. So they should just rip every single team in Major League Baseball until they die.
That sounds like that's a sad life, man.
It would be a sad life. It's a sad life to pretend that you can make decisions in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean, if I got to make all my decisions in hindsight, I wouldn't have gotten rid of my 200 Bitcoins. So that would have been that'd be nice right about now.
I would not have played Vernon Davis.
And yeah, I'm just gonna keep playing Vernon Davis. Luckily, he's on the Thursday slate this week, so I don't have to.
I would have had 0 Hilton and 0 Jacoby Brissett. What a terrible! And I picked that game too because we at RotoWorld we each I assigned before the week who we're gonna cover. Reeves gets the Browns every week. But I'm watching the game live, and so I'm just every single play, hard, with a lot of Brissett and Hilton. But we move forward.
We're going to have to move forward because if you played Brissett and Hilton last week, there's no way else to move. Right. Let's go ahead and jump into the slate, though, because, again, week 13, Got all the teams in action. And our first game we're going to talk about, it's New England at Buffalo. It's a 48.5 point total. New England 8.5 point favorites. And Reeves, when we look at the Patriots, it's the same problem every week. We got Gronk, we got Cooks. Is it Deion Lewis? Is it Rex Burkhead? Is it going to be Mike Gillislee? Guess what? It's not. I mean, there are all these different guys we can look at on the Patriots. It always drives me nuts because at least one of them is going to go off. We just never know who it's going to be. So let's talk about the Patriots against Buffalo. The Bills, they haven't been stopping the run except for with the guy we all went all in on last week, and that was Kareem Hunt. So what are we doing with this Patriots team? Are we going right back to Deion Lewis?
I mean, the backfield actually, this is the most clarity we've had all year. I mean, it's Deion Lewis and Burkhead are the two guys you're playing. I mean, Lewis has got, 14 or more touches now in each of the past 6 weeks. Burkhead is just an ultimate, complimentary dude. He plays with short yardage, plays in the passing game, plays near the goal line. It's kind of just been those two guys. I mean, Lewis is kind of he'll run into games where he gets you those hollow yards. But he's been awesome, man. He looked great on Sunday. I mean, he was ripping up chunk yards. He's getting into the paint. So, I mean, both those guys are really good. They're priced affordably. It just, like I said, it took us 11 games. I mean, the passing game, I mean, Evan's going to talk about Gronk. I'm sure he's got some great Gronk nuggets. But, I mean, I want to talk about Brandon Cooks a little bit. I mean, Brandon Cooks, since Hogan has gone down, a lot of people were trying to figure out where, this was going to go. It's going to be Amendola. Is it going to be one of the backs? Who's going to get the spike? And it's been all Brandon Cooks. Since Hogan's gone down, he's had 29.7% of the targets, 24.3, and 25% of the targets. Those are his 3 highs on the season. Over the past 3 weeks. And we talked about it 2 weeks ago when we had Keenan Allen as a big bounce back spot. Buffalo is just getting torched by wide receiver ones. Last week, they only allowed 7 for 41 to Tyreek Hill, but the week before it was Keenan Allen. The week before, Michael Thomas got him for over 100. Robbie Anderson got him for a tud the week before. Mike Evans hit him for 788 and 1. AJ Green 189 and 1. Demaryius Thomas 6 for 98. So I mean, I'm going right back to the Brandon Cooks well. I mean, the Patriots have scored 37 or more points in Buffalo in each of the 3 times they played there. So I mean, I'm just gonna keep riding Brandon Cooks, who, as I said, shed that stigma of being a up and down volatile player. He's actually been consistent. He's had a high floor and a high ceiling, especially since Hogan's gone down. So, I mean, Brandon Cooks is that guy. I mean, I'm looking at outside of, the obvious Gronk and Brady.
Yeah, between 7 and 11 targets each of the last 4 weeks. And there's one thing we know that we like in fantasy sports. We like the volume. And another guy getting a lot of volume, Evan, that would be Mr. Rob Gronkowski. Do you prefer Cooks or Gronk this week?
With Gronk, so late last week, I started, people were talking about something having to do with bubble wrap and Rob Gronkowski.
Huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I heard about it. I don't know. Maybe I missed that, but I started to hear about it. That was, one of the plays that I had that saved me from losing everything last week on T.Y. Hilton and Jacoby Brissett. Was having a bunch of Gronk. So Gronk is from Buffalo. He's from a suburb of Buffalo. He's played 6 career games at Buffalo, which is historically a very difficult place to play, and you usually see reduced statistics from players. But his stat lines in those 6 games are 5 catches for 109 yards and a touchdown, 7 catches for 113 yards and a touchdown, 7 catches for 94 yards, 5 catches for 104 yards and a touchdown, 7 catches for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns, 4 catches for 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's 6 for 6. We could look at maybe 7 for 94 and no touchdowns and say that's a little bit suboptimal, but that's 16.4 points. All right. Now, I posted that statistic on Twitter, and I love that somebody came back and said, if you go back and look at Tom Brady's stats at Buffalo, you would think he's from Buffalo too. I love that. Retweeted that, and I think that Brady goes under owned this week. He's been consistently high floor, high ceiling every single week. On the other side, I want to talk about Zay Jones because Zay Jones is priced at the minimum on FanDuel. He has 7+ targets in 4 of his last 5. And he's facing a Patriots defense that, while it has gotten better, it is still giving up a lot of production to wide receivers. And Kelvin Benjamin, I would be shocked if he plays. The Bills are trying to push this that he's okay. You know, their trade deadline moves, I mean, I've never seen such terrible trade deadline moves. And, I mean, I know the Bills fans will say, oh, well, Marcel Darius, he didn't want to be here. I mean, he spent he signed a big contract extension there. That's a coaching staff thing. When you have a great player, you try to, get them to buy into what you're doing. You don't just ship them off. And he was only playing 40% of the snaps. Yeah, well, he was playing all rundowns. And when you remove a 350-pound player from your base offense, you start to get gashed every single week against the run. You shouldn't be surprised that you just traded away a great player. And then they traded for Kelvin Benjamin, who, by the way, had knee problems when he was still playing for the Panthers, now suddenly has a torn meniscus. Did they give this guy, a good physical? That he, did they trade for damaged goods? And I know they're trying to push this, that hey, he has a chance to play. They tried to push it last week. They listed him as questionable, even though he didn't practice all week. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he will try to play this week, but I think that in all likelihood he won't. And Zay Jones will be the one again. And Tyrod's been pushing the rock to Zay. If you just go back and look at when he replaced Peterman a couple of weeks ago, 17 targets in about 6 quarters since then. And Zay Jones hasn't been super efficient, but at his price, I mean, stone minimum on FanDuel, I'm like, that's hard to get away from, in my opinion.
Yeah, was actually one of my highest owned guys last week over on DK at 4K. He's 4,600, so he's priced up a little bit more. But again, 10 targets, and it's really hard to, it's tough to argue against him. Plus, where else are those targets going to go? It should be a positive game script for the Bills passing game, which leads me, Reeves, what do we do with Mr. Tyrod this week? He's 5,400 over on DK. You want to be able to get a lot of these expensive guys in. Tyrod's a way to go about it. What do you think about him this week, Reeves?
Yeah, I like Tyrod. He's typically not a dude I like to play in DFS and outside of cash, just because he's one of those guys, like those safe floors, but like not high ceiling guys. Like Alex Smith was like that forever. I mean, he's got 14 or more points in 7 of his games, but he's gone over 20 points just twice. I mean, the one he did was that game against the Jets where it could set up like this, where it was, complete jailbreak, hair on fire, fourth quarter, just throwing like crazy. And when the defense doesn't care if you're throwing short and stacking that production. So, I mean, he's on the radar, especially if you're going to, do some stacking in this game. I mean, I'm probably not going to own a ton of them just because, I mean, when I'm stacking this game, it's going to be all with Brady. People might not play Brady a lot. I think they'll play him by default because he's always owned. But, I mean, people are going to look at the Bills and that passing touchdowns that they haven't allowed, which is super fluky. I mean, they're allowing passing touchdowns at the same rate the Jaguars are per attempt, once every 40 pass attempts. And they're allowing it, they're allowing a passing touchdown once every 240 passing yards, which is tops in the NFL. But they're not like the Jaguars pass defense. They're giving up tons of production in the passing game. Teams just haven't been able to put it in the paint because they're getting all rushing touchdowns against them. That might flip this week. I mean, I still would count on Brady throwing 3 touchdowns in this game or more. Tyrod he really doesn't fit like what I do in DFS because, I mean, unless it's in cash where he's so cheap, I'm just trying to get that floor. I think he's an option for that this week, even though there are a bunch of good quarterback plays at the floor level this week. But yeah, he's just not one of those guys that really crashes, a ceiling often.
I think one of the bigger problems, we talked about Brady and how he's going to be under-owned. 7.8K over on DK. I agree, but the way this week at least looks for me, Evan, is that I'm not sure the value is there to where I can pay up for both the quarterback, and then when the guys I want to pair him with, they're also really expensive between Cooks and between Gronk. So I'm having trouble with that particular roster construction. Maybe some value opens up, or maybe if you guys give me a few guys to love later on in the show, maybe we can talk a little bit then. By the way, if Chris Hogan plays, is that lessen your Brandon Cooks interest?
We are not optimistic as of tonight.
Okay. Understood. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the Pats RBs though, because just one little piece. I know that Reeves already talked about him, but Belichick is a guy who is better than anyone at looking at the weaknesses of his opponent and exploiting them. And the clear weakness for the Bills is their run defense. And so I think that we see a lot of Dion and Burkhead again. They literally played the exact same amount of snaps last week and had almost the exact same amount of touches. It was 16 for Dion, 15 for Rex. I know that Burkhead executed with his chances in scoring position, but Dion got a bunch too. So they're hard to separate right now. I think that Burkhead clearly has the bigger passing game role. But I mean, they're kind of like Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram light. You know, maybe not quite as dynamic as Alvin Kamara, but you know they're not terribly far off as a tandem from that backfield. And you know, I think they're playable together. I think it's, you know, you might minimize some of your ceiling playing them together. You certainly could play them together in a season-long league. But I think that we're going to see a lot of them again, especially if Belichick, you know, has one of these game plans where it's just designed to attack the weakness of his opponent, which is usually what he does.
Yeah, and these are two of the faster teams in the NFL. I mean, I'm on the slate, and I actually think it might go over by quite a bit. All right, let's talk Tampa and Green Bay. It's a game where when you look at it at first, you go, ugh, it's not that attractive. A couple of bad football teams right now. It's a 44.5 total. Tampa, 1.5 favorites. First thing I want to talk about, Reeves, is Jameis Winston. He's going to play. He's going to be throwing to Mike Evans. And by the way, Mike Evans is way too cheap. Jameis Winston, though, that offensive line is banged up a little bit. What do you think about Jameis and this Bucs offense, Reeves?
Yeah, this is kind of interesting because, you know, Jameis is a guy from a season long, I think, because people are going to, like, rush to pick up. But, I mean, you know, I've always, you know, expressed, you know, pessimism, you know, when you have guys coming back off multi-week injuries, especially at the quarterback position. I mean, I wish I had more raw data available for this right now. I mean, but I've done it, you know, with Ben Roethlisberger, Tony Romo. You know, it's just not often that quarterbacks, you know, come back and miss chunks of seasons and come back. But quarterback play significantly dips, you know, usually in that first game back. You know, it kind of takes you a game or two to get reacclimated, you know, to game speed. You know, practice just doesn't cut it. So, I mean, Winston is a guy who I could see definitely disappoint. And don't forget that he was a disappointing player before he even got shelved. You know, so I mean, it's a situation here though when you tie it to DFS, we're not looking to play him in cash anyways. You know, so I mean, it's totally fine. You know, if you're going to take some shots on this game to use him in a spot, you know, it's kind of similar to the Josh Doxson conversation we had last week, where I said, you know, I had a different take from DFS than I did from seasonal, and that's kind of what I have with Winston here. I mean, he is a guy when you're looking, because I think that this game is a very intriguing game from a DFS standpoint, especially because I think this game harbors most of the pricing values on both sides of the ball here. You know, we talk about Mike Evans, you know, is it Winston in a tournament lineup? You know, even Deshaun Jackson is on the board here. I mean, he's had double-digit PPR points in 3 straight games, and the Packers have allowed a tandem of double-digit points to pairs of wide receivers in 5 of their past 7 games. Is a team just getting lit up by wide receivers. So, I mean, we talk about Evans, and then on the other side of the ball, I mean, we've got, you know, value with Jamal Williams. Devontae Adams is just a smashing value over on FanDuel. I'm not even sure who slept on the wide receiver pricing in totality, because Evan already brought up Zay Jones. Wide receiver pricing over there in general is pretty whack. But, I mean, outside of stacking in this game, I mean, Winston's a guy I'm probably not going to, you know, trust in my season-long leagues and really trust in cash, just because of those things I've talked about. Like, I've really have like a hard time playing those guys coming off multi-week injuries, especially when quarterback points are so replaceable at the place. So many other options that I feel more confident in. The matchup, everything lines up, but I mean, these guys usually disappoint when they come off the shelf.
Yeah, and that's disappointing to me because, Evan, if this was a spot where Winston had been healthy for a couple weeks, I would absolutely be loading him up here, especially at this price. Like, he's super cheap, but I just don't know if I can do it coming back from that injury.
Yeah, I mean, he's not even really on my radar. Who is on my radar is definitely Mike Evans. Double-digit targets in 4 straight games he wasn't kicked out of. Scoreless with the asterisk, you know. Scoreless since week 7. You know, we all know he's a touchdown scorer, so he's a prime positive regression touchdown candidate. Packers are just getting clocked by receivers. Antonio Brown, we saw that. Golden Tate, 7 for 113. Marvin Jones, 7 for 107.2. Dontrell Inman, 6 for 88 a couple of weeks ago. Mike Wallace, 4 for 56 and a touchdown. Martavis comes back to life. And also Josh Hermsmeyer, who does a great job identifying buy low targets based on air yards. He's one of Hermsmeyer's premier buy low targets this week, and Hermsmeyer's been hitting on a lot of stuff with his air yards projection. So just checks a lot of boxes.
Kevin King didn't practice.
Kevin King didn't practice. I mean, Kevin King, like, you kind of maybe even want him out there.
Yeah, I was going to say, he kind of sucks. I mean, he could play. Come on, Kevin.
Think about it. It's the same thing we talked about, though, like with Vernon Hargraves, where you want him out there, but, like, he's actually playing ahead of someone. So he's actually thought of as –
right. No, and, hey, I think Kevin King's going to be a good corner in the league. He was a great corner at UW, and he was a spark freak, and he's got long arms, and he's huge. But the Packers also have been shutting down tight ends all year. I mean, Jason Witten has the best game against them all year. He had 61 scoreless yards. They've shut down Jimmy Graham. They've done a great job against tight ends, but they've done a terrible job against wideouts. And Deshaun Jackson, he seems like the type of receiver that would excel like on turf, et cetera. But, dude has played his entire career on grass. I mean, he played in Philly, he played in Washington. He's been consistent. He's got 60-plus yards and or a touchdown in 7 of his last 10. And, I mean, he's in play. So I want Winston because I like his wideouts this week a lot. I love Mike Evans this week. I mean, I think I'm going to probably end up playing him in cash.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would consider Michael Evans close to a lock button as far as I'm concerned. Okay. I mean, he's what, $1,500 too cheap? Maybe not that much, but he's way too cheap as far as I'm concerned. You mentioned Jamal Williams, Aaron Jones practice, or he was a limited participant in practice today. Evan, do you think Aaron Jones ends up playing?
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, I really like Jamal Williams at the outset of the week, but if Aaron Jones is practicing at all on Wednesday, that suggests that he's on track. Unless he's like a DNP tomorrow, I would expect him to play. They also expressed some optimism on Ty Montgomery. I don't know, was he DNP today?
Yeah, he did not practice.
All right, so he's probably
it doesn't matter.
Likely.
Just one, if even one of them.
Just one ruins it. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, Jamal Williams was a monster in terms of usage last week, and I still am kind of skeptical of him as a player. I mean, just kind of everything went right for him on that screen pass score. I don't even think he was touched, really. I don't think he was touched now that I'm like replaying the play in my head. And he wasn't efficient as a runner. I don't love him as a player, but he got every touch in the backfield. And that can absolutely spring you to fantasy success, even against good run defenses, which the Bucs have not been.
All right. Well, And here, real quick, Reeves, do we need to talk about any of the Green Bay passing game?
Yeah, man. Absolutely, dude.
Go ahead.
I mean, listen,
Reeves loves a dude here.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point of the season. We talked about this at a couple shows going. We're at the point of the season where when we flip the page to a new week, there are specific target teams now that we are looking to exploit. And we go and look at their opponent, and we look at who they're facing and the guys that are getting the opportunities on those teams. That's part of the reason why we would have liked Jamal Williams, and we will come back on him if both Aaron Jones or Ty Montgomery happen to be inactive on Sunday. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's going to get 20 touches against a team that's allowing that's 30th in the league in rushing yards allowed on the road, and it's basically packed it up. But I mean, where we target the Bucs every week is in the passing game, and we target them at the wide receiver position. I think Hundley's going to be a popular guy coming off of that Sunday night game, and his price, Tampa Bay's allowing the most passing yards per game to opposing passes in the league at 293. He's got probably multiple touchdown upside in this game, and you get that little bit of rushing ability that Hundley has. I think he'll be a guy that people will gravitate to. But I mean, I'm looking at Devontae Adams. I mean, he's just popped off the page since he's actually gotten better since Hundley's taken over, for Aaron Rodgers. His target share over the past 4 games has been 26.3%, 32%, 27.8% and 34.6%. And he's gotten off the last 2 weeks against the Baltimore Ravens and the Steelers. And the Steelers have been trending down for a few weeks now. But two defenses on paper that, he probably shouldn't have had as good as games again that he had. And then you look at the Bucs. I mean, they've just been bludgeoned by not just wide receivers, but opposing wide receiver ones. That's what we talked about with Julio last week. I mean, they are facing the most targets per game to wide receiver ones. They're allowing the most yardage per game to wide receiver ones. And that was true before they got 250 dropped on them last week. And they've allowed the second most touchdowns in the league to wide receiver ones at 8, just behind the Tennessee Titans, who have allowed 9 to wide receiver ones. And they're also getting murked in the vertical passing game, which is where Devontae Adams has been hitting the past few weeks. I mean, they have allowed the most completions, the highest completion rate, and the most touchdown passes on passes 15 yards or further downfield in the entire NFL. I mean, it's when we flip the page and they face a capable receiver, I mean, that dude's getting smashed. We're talking about Devontae Adams. He's the same price on FanDuel that he is on DraftKings. He's the wide receiver 31 on FanDuel. Like, that's just absolutely insane for him to be priced there for the type of volume he's getting and the touchdown production he provides. So, I mean, I'm probably going to have 100% Devontae Adams, in cash this week. I mean, he's on FanDuel especially just because his price and his opportunity just line up with the matchup too greatly.
If you're on DraftKings, how cheap would Jordy have to be before you played him?
Oh man, it's so bad. I mean, I have him on, a bunch of season longs, and I mean he was crushing it with Rodgers, and I played him in the first game I think that Hundley started, and I haven't played him since. I mean, he's just riding my bench, and I mean I've thought about dropping him at times.
35 yards or fewer in every start.
I
so
get it.
Bad.
It's just awfully tough to look at Jordy Nelson 4,400 and not want to click a button,
especially against the Bucs. I mean, it's tempting. You weren't tempted against the Ravens or the Steelers, but you are mildly tempted this week. I agree. I saw how cheap he was, and I was like, nah.
Well, you're going to end up talking yourself into it by Sunday.
No, I will not.
A couple shares.
No,
but for 150 lineups, and put them on 10.
When you're playing in season-long leagues and you're starting Jeremy Maclin every single week over Jordy Nelson, you don't have any problem talking yourself out of Jordy Nelson in DFS.
I guess that does make it easier. I understand. All right, let's talk about our next game. It's Philly at Seattle. It's a 47-point total. Philly, 5.5-point favorites. And this is obviously the Sunday night game. We've got Seattle at home. Another Russ smash spot, or at least I feel like every spot's a Russ smash spot. Evan, what do you think about Russ this week at home against Philly?
First of all, I am so excited for this game. This is like the best. I mean, this is amazing. It's got like MVP implications, I think. I mean, I know that, amongst big media, Carson Wentz is like the lock MVP, maybe Tom Brady, but for me, like Russell Wilson is the MVP because.
So wait, you're not talking about Alex Smith as an MVP anymore? Nobody is? Is that what I'm hearing?
Nah.
For September.
For September, yeah. So, I mean, if they, if like the Seahawks win this game and Russ just balls out and does like all the magical things that he very often does, I'm going to be unbearable on Twitter. Just like mute me because in like victory laps regarding Russ and like, trying to piss off all the Eagles fans who are just like, they're
pretty easy to piss off, buddy.
Oh, they're very easy. I mean, if you say something where they think that like their player like should be deserving, they think that you are like proactively hating on them, but
you went to their house.
I think that Russ is an awesome play.
Me too.
Thursday through Monday, or just straight up on FanDuel on main slate. I think that he still has a high floor and a high ceiling. I think it could get ugly. I mean, the Eagles have a great front. The Eagles are a great team. They're a great team, and they have an amazing defensive front, and they should straight dominate the Seahawks offensive line, which has been a little bit better, but what does that get you? 32nd in the league to 28th in the league, but the Eagles have given up a bunch of rushing yards to QBs. And I think, and I mean, when they face pretty good quarterbacks, like they've given up production to them. And Russ is he's a magician, man. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like he's a special human being. There are not two people in the world that can do what he does. Maybe Deshaun Watson, but we've seen him in a small sample size, and he's now torn both of his ACLs, so we'll see how he comes back. But Russ does special things on the football field, that really no one else is capable of, and he's capable of overcoming very difficult scenarios because of his outside of structure playmaking ability. Now, if you look at his pass catcher core, none of those guys are in particularly promising spots. Doug Baldwin, so the Eagles have given up a ton of production to receivers over the course of the year, but not recently. And Patrick Robinson is real high in the slot corner, is real high in Pro Football Focus's grades. I think he's number 3 overall out of 119. And that's who Doug Baldwin is going to see the most of. And then the Eagles have been just real middle of the road in tight end production allowed to tight ends. But Jimmy Graham, of course, has been a monster. I think that Paul Richardson is the interesting guy here in the pass catcher core. He can run behind guys. He can win in contested situations. I mean, the outside corners have been better. Ronald Darby is a big improvement, and Jalen Mills hasn't been nearly as bad as he was last year. But that's probably my biggest concern. Like, it's not real clear to me what Seahawks pass catcher stands out as a great play this week.
Well, the thing is, I think we can play Russ naked. That's one of the playing a guy like Russ.
Yes, absolutely you can.
Get that rushing upside, then it's just party time. Reeves, I assume we're always like, this show might as well rebrand ourselves the Russ Wilson show.
Yeah, and I don't want to suggest, what's going to happen, what words are going to follow all this, that the Eagles are a bad defense. I think the Eagles are a good defense. I think they're an underrated defense, and I think, like Evan said, they're going to get pressure. And from a real football standpoint, I would expect the Eagles to win because the Seahawks play no complementary offensive football, and they go in these ruts for like periods of drives, and then Russ has to bail them out and like gets hot, particularly usually in the second half. I would expect you see that in this game where just for like a quarter or maybe a quarter and a half, like the Seahawks look awful in this game because it seems to happen every week, and it's because they can't play ahead of the sticks often. But the Eagles, man, like, they've really, just besides getting Darby back, I mean, they have not made a lot of wholesale changes on defense. And this was a defense we were particularly targeting. They had allowed 6 straight QB1 weeks before this 4-game winning streak. And over that 4-game winning streak, they have faced CJ Beathard, Brock Osweiler, a dying, shot in the leg, Dak Prescott, and Mitchell Trubisky. Like, they're a great team, like Evan said. They're smashing these teams. That's what great teams do. They just obliterate these teams. That's what they've done the past 2 weeks. They've beaten 4 teams in a row by 23 or more points. Like, they're crushing it. But from a defensive standpoint, this was a team that was giving up 20 points per game to quarterbacks: Kirk Cousins, Cam Newton, Carson Palmer, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning got him for 22. Alex got him in week 2 for a QB10 finish. They faced just really drudgery quarterback play outside of Dak, and it was in the middle of this just terrible run for Dak. So, I mean, I think Russell is going to be low-key undervalued in this game. I mean, Vegas seems to be siding with the take, though, that the Eagles are incredible too, because Seattle's got, I think, their lowest implied total of the year. So, I mean, I could be completely wrong on that, but I think that it's a game where Russ can do a lot better than it's going to be implied given the matchup, just based on, I think that there's a chance for this game to shoot out. I mean, like I said, the Eagles haven't played anyone that can match points to them, and Seattle's going to have to match points because I don't think they're really going to stop the Eagles either. The one thing that's cool about this game too is that both teams are kind of, pass funnel defenses at this point. The Eagles are pass funnel defense for multiple reasons. One, they stop the run, and 2, they've had such game script in their favor that teams don't run the football on them. And Seattle has really righted the ship on the run defense. They're allowing 2.7 yards per carry to running backs, since week 3. So, I mean, the Eagles want to run the football, and they can run it. They've run it on good teams. But I mean, they're going to force them to throw the football. So this game has a chance to really shoot out. It's a really fun game, like Evan said. I think, basically like almost everyone's in play here. Ertz is going to be interesting because a lot of people are going to want to play Gronk. Ertz is in a pretty good spot as well. If you look at tight end If you look at tight end production, well, he definitely won't be owned on DraftKings, but and from the FanDuel sense, Seattle's he had 12 targets last week. Seattle's on a tight end 1 and 5 of their past 6 games. It's a spot for Ertz to really hit. Like I said, I think more people will just go up to Gronk, though. I mean, Kelsey's actually in a tremendous spot as well. I'd expect him to bounce back this week as well. So, I mean, maybe you just have all that ownership, spread those guys out. Alshon popped up on the injury report with a foot injury. He's been crushing it too as well. I mean, you can really play all the guys in this game because how hot these 2 quarterbacks have been. When you have hot quarterback play, you can latch on to all these ancillary guys because any of these guys can pop. So, I mean, the primetime slate's going to be really fun to see who had the right guy that, popped this week, who has the 2 touchdown Paul Richardson game, going against Jalen Mills, or, who has the Zach Ertz game, or Nelson Aguilar, even if he gets off this game. It's going to be really interesting because both these quarterbacks.
Torrey Smith?
No, probably not. But but it's the 2 hottest quarterbacks in the league, man, facing off. It's what these games have potential to be lots of fun.
Reeves is good at this, man. He's really good at this. I mean, that was awesome. The idea about, like, I think both teams are going to struggle to run the ball. Mm-hmm. I think that we're going to see a lot of passing in this game. The Eagles don't give up anything on the ground. Neither do the Seahawks. One other thing to note, both teams give up a ton of rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks. So, and Wentz runs, he's 4th in the NFL among quarterbacks in rushing attempts. Russ, we know how he does. I mean, the Seahawks leading RB rusher is Chris Carson, who, like, in week 3, it's what would be infuriating would be another 20-touch game for Eddie Lacy.
No, don't do it. By the way, can I finally drop Thomas Rawls for my season-long team?
Yeah.
Well, I spent 2/3 of my fab budget on him, so I don't really want to drop him. I'm making the playoffs. Yeah. Look at Evan. He just can't even talk right now. He's just like, I just need a drink after that one.
No, I still have Rawls as my RB6 everywhere. I'm right there with you. Well, you want to drop them together?
It's miserable. It's not fun.
A therapeutic double drop.
Yeah, get exposed for this game, guys. And plus, we were talking about, the Seahawks, they have one of their lowest implied totals on the entire season. Well, guess what? With Russ, with like the yards he piles up, it doesn't matter. Yeah, a little bit, but it doesn't matter that much. Like look, they might put up 20 points and he still could top 30 points over on FanDuel with the rushing upside. So yeah, ball out with Russ this weekend. All right, let's talk about our bounce backs. And there's one bounce back. He's coming for the ultimate bounce back. He hasn't played in 3 years. Come on, Reeves. Talk to me about Josh Gordon, because he's going to be owned this week.
I mean, I have literally no expectations for Josh Gordon. I'm rooting hard for Josh Gordon. I want him to be the player that he was, in 2013. I want that guy. I want that guy to be back. But I mean, I have no expectations on the road in a tough matchup with a quarterback that's thrown 5 touchdown passes this season. Against a passing
the other team.
Yeah, we count Kaiser. I don't know if any of them were housed. How many of them were housed? Because he throws them all in the red zone. I don't know
either, but I'm going to guess some of them were.
He throws them all in the red zone, so I don't know. They're long run backs if they happen. But I mean, listen, I'm rooting for him. I hope it happens. I mean, Corey Coleman's been balling out. He's looked pretty good. He's had some tough matchups and played good. So I mean, there's kind of a trade-off there too. How much does he take away? Because Coleman and Kaiser have actually had a rapport dating back to the preseason. So I'm curious how it fits in, man. I mean, maybe Evan has a stronger take than Gordon than I do, but I'm just gonna watch and enjoy it and see what happens this week.
Evan, if you're doing 100 lineups, 5 Josh Gordon teams. Come on, Evan. Come on, Josh Gordon, train with me.
What is he even priced
on Josh Gordon? 41 on DK.
Yeah, 41. Look at Reeves. Reeves just was like, man, maybe I could go there.
That's 400 more than Seth Roberts.
Come on. Reeves is singing about it now. Oh, the wheels are turned. Oh, he's like, maybe 41. Okay, hold on. Let's see. We'll play this or that. You can have Josh Gordon or Bruce Ellington.
Just play Josh Gordon, man.
Come on, have some fun. You know how bad you're gonna feel, by the way, if you want to root for this guy and he catches like a 70-yard bomb.
I agree with you.
That's true.
Like, I'm gonna have some Josh Gordon this week. I don't like him. He's probably gonna put up 2 points, but I'm still gonna fire because guess what? They're gonna be airing it out. We know that if there's one thing, and Evan, you can speak to this, that like likes to do. They like to throw it deep. I think Kaiser has one of like the deepest average ball in all of football. So come on, Evan, come on.
I mean.
They're going to be able to run it this week for as long as they can. For as long as they can.
Come
on, run it well recently.
I love Josh Gordon, man. I mean, I love him. So I don't think I'm going to play him, but I'll be rooting for him. If I don't play him and he balls out, like I'll be happy. So
you'll be happier if he's.
That's where I'm at. That's where I am.
All right. I'm going to have a little bit of I just couldn't. I would feel so dumb if he just catches the 70-yard bomb and I don't get to celebrate with everybody. It's like when I was at the DK Live final 2 years ago, and that's when Doug Baldwin went on that crazy touchdown streak. And I said, I'm not playing Doug Baldwin. And you know what sucked? Everybody in the room celebrating when Doug Baldwin caught a touchdown. And I'm just sitting there with my freaking hood on. I don't even want to talk to people. That wasn't fun. So guess what? I'm going to be joining the crowd this time, rooting for Josh Gordon. Reeves, who are some of your other bounce-back candidates this week?
All right, I got a pretty gross one, but Jared Cook. Jared Cook's in a bounce-back spot. I mean, he had a near donut last week, but he had 21% of the team targets, led the team. He had an end zone target, which he, of course, dropped. But, I mean, volume is going to be there with Crabtree and Cooper out. We're talking about, like Evan brought up, Seth Roberts. I mean, they're going to well with Seth Roberts, our boy Holton, Mr. $0 Holton from last year.
Oh, you guys are missing the fun one.
Cordarrelle Patterson.
Oh,
by default, it sets up to be a game where Jared Cook, is in a good spot, and no one's going to want to play him because he's been awful the past 2 weeks, and maybe no one wants to play him because the Giants just held Vernon Davis to a goose egg the week before. But opposing tight ends have still scored 37% of the touchdowns against the Giants. It's the highest share in the league. I'm going to have some Jared Cook this week, man. And another tight end, too, I brought him up a little earlier. It was, Travis Kelce. Anytime he's gone under 20% of the team targets, he's come back the next week and had over 30% of the team looks. They do this. Doug Baldwin's in a similar fashion where he just kind of goes in these – he has these games where he doesn't get targeted. And then, they kind of forget he's there. Then next week, he comes back and gets a bunch of targets. So I think Kelsey's in a good spot against a Jets team that's 24th in points allowed per game to tight ends. It's a good tight end week. So, last time it was a good tight end week. None of these guys hit. So,
yeah. You mentioned Kelsey, too. He's not going to be owned at all because if people are paying up at tight end, they're just going to spend the $300 more for Gronk. And, you can play both of them, I think, pretty easily. Evan, do you have any bounce-back candidates for me?
I do this week. I usually don't, but I do. One of them was going to be Jared Cook. I feel like Reeves went real soft on him. You can't draw up a better spot for this than this. Stats are out, facing a bottom 3 tight end defense. Reeves, you should have gone harder.
I've been going hard on him. That's why I'm a little scorned.
All right. Fair enough. We talked about another guy we talked about one guy who hasn't played in 3 years. How about another guy who hasn't played in 3 years? Geno Smith. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? 4,500 on DraftKings, 6,000 on FanDuel, facing a historically bad Raiders defense. Everyone wanted to play Paxton Lynch. But did he throw for 20 yards last week?
You know who I played last week? I played the Raiders defense.
Okay.
That seemed like a better play. Paxton Lynch. Here, let me look at Paxton's old
Simeon kind of screwed you late because he came
but we still did okay. Let's see. Okay. Paxton Lynch last week he was 9 of 14 for 41 whole yards. Plus the interception where it bounced off 3 different guys and landed on a guy's belly in the end zone.
Yeah, how about getting their first interception of the year on accident?
I mean, when it's gone 12 weeks without an interception, I think whatever one.
Variant struck.
Yeah.
Because the guy was laying on his back and it just dropped onto him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Geno Smith can have a good game. Did you guys play him last year when he got the start against the Ravens?
I did. I remember everyone did.
Yeah, he kind of balled out for a minute and then he tore his ACL during the game. But I mean, balling out, he threw
Nuno had like an 80-yard slant. I remember, and house like an 80-yard slant.
It was a long, yeah. It was an Nuno score, but it looked like it was going to be the nut play for a minute. I was like, yes, I was celebrating.
The Gino to Quincy and Nuno stack. Like if you went there, bravo.
Yeah. Evan Ingram. I mean, Sterling Shepard is coming back this week. But, I mean, I think that the guy that you probably stack Geno with would be Evan Ingram. I don't know. It seems like you guys aren't even taking Geno very seriously. Shame on you. A.J. Green on Monday night against the Steelers. The Steelers have been getting torched by wideouts lately. I think he bounces back in a major way. And then Vernon Davis on Thursday Night Football. Again, Josh Hermsmeyer pinpointed him as a buy low guy. Based on air yards, no one. What do you? Let me ask you this, because so Thursday guys are always over-owned, but Vernon Davis just burned everyone. So are people going to play him? Like, is he going to be more owned than he should be this time?
Who's going to be owned in this game? Ryan will be owned. Ryan will be owned for sure. Yeah. Probably over-owned, but I mean, he's getting a good matchup. I don't mean over-owned from the sense you shouldn't play him, just from the slate and him being a good play, he'll have increased ownership, but that's about, and Crowder. Yeah. Oh, and Crowder, people are going to play a lot of Crowder, but Cousins is the second highest priced quarterback. So, I mean, people are probably not going to really go all in on that. So, I mean, on FanDuel he is. So, I mean, I don't know if he'll have a crazy amount of ownership, but yeah, not play Vern.
Yeah, probably not.
I'm playing him.
All right. Well, of course you are. You love Big Vern.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got to ask about one more bounce back count. And this will also take us into our quarterbacks and running backs.
Here we go.
Kareem Hunt. Let's talk about Kareem Hunt.
No, that offense is broken, man.
Is it?
It's very broken.
Eventually they have to figure it out, right?
The Jets are pretty good against the run now, man. Listen, the Bills were a team that were giving up like historic yardage on the ground, on the road in Kansas City, and it was just, and they just put like 9 dudes in the box every play. They didn't care.
It's the troll game. I
mean, it could be. I mean, listen, I've hung on the last 2 weeks for Kareem Hunt in just like cherry spots against the Giants, against the Bills. This is a team that can't get in the red zone. They've lost all their splash plays. I mean, over the past 4 weeks, Alex Smith's deep throws have just plummeted. His yards per attempt have plummeted. They can't really just get splash plays during an offense. Again, it's a team that just like I said, they can't play counter football. The Jets are allowing opposing running backs to run for 3.5 yards per carry over the past 7 games. They're another team that's kind of ready to shift in that regard. No, I'm just not going to do it, man.
If Andy Reid tomorrow announces Patrick Mahomes as the Chiefs starting quarterback for Week 13, we got something to talk about.
Then I'm playing Patrick Mahomes everywhere because I'm.
Oh yeah, we're going all in.
I almost picked him up in season. I seriously considered it. I have Jimmy Garoppolo. He's going to start for me in a couple weeks during the playoffs. But then again, Alex Smith is my other quarterback. So what does it matter at this point? But I'm playing some Kareem Hunt, man. It's like those games where you pay $1, and if you make it, you win. But if you miss it, you got to pay $2 to get back in. Like, I am thousands of dollars in on Kareem Hunt at this point, and I keep throwing that ball, trying to get in the basket, and eventually I feel like it's going to stick. And I'm just so invested at this point. I'm not willing to cut my losses.
I tried to talk you out of almost spot to this last week with Dak Prescott, where I tried to convince you an offense was broken.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I know. Dak is awfully cheap this week, by the way.
No, I think he's interesting on Thursday night.
He is interesting.
He's a total fade the public play, and those usually work out.
Yeah. Hey, Kareem Hunt's going to be like 5%.
It's true, man. No one's going to play Kareem Hunt for sure this week because a lot of people have rode that wave for 2 weeks in a row, just trying to catch some of that regression, and it just hasn't happened.
But the difference between Dak and Kareem Hunt is that Dak is actually like kind of in a good spot. Kareem Hunt is in a real bad spot.
And Dak touches the ball.
And right.
That's important too. All right, well, who are some of the running backs that we do like this week? Because Alvin Kamara, he's the most expensive guy over on DK. And look, Evan, I'm kind of torn. What?
I mean, I can't believe that he's the high. I mean, it's really unbelievable.
Yeah, I can't do it. Like, look, I love watching the guy play. I mean, he's amazing to watch run the football, but he's still going to get, 18 touches max in this game. Carolina decent against the run. Like, I just can't do it. And I feel like, I've talked about I'm beating my head against the wall with Kareem Hunt. I feel like I'm just going to beat my head against the wall for fading Alvin Kamara. But, Evan, I don't know how I can do it with this volume.
Yeah, and the Panthers have all that speed at linebacker. I mean, it's not really a good matchup for Alvin Kamara. And
it feels like a Mark Ingram week.
Yeah. When these teams played in week 3, I believe it was, they had rushing success against the Panthers. They averaged like over 5 yards per carry. They've been a matchup-proof running game. I mean, in season long, there's no hesitation. Obviously. Yeah. What our question is, do they have the kind of upside that we're looking for in daily fantasy? And I mean, they do, but this matchup, in theory, is not hot for upside at all. So it's a conundrum. I couldn't stomach paying, this much for Alvin Kamara on DraftKings, certainly. Some of the RBs that I like, Marshawn Lynch, 29 touches, facing the Giants as a big home favorite, with no wideouts. I mean, he should be the centerpiece of the offense. He set a season high for snap percentage last week. He's 4,800 on DK, man. He's 6,200 on FanDuel. If we can get 10 fewer touches than he got last week, I feel good about that play at his price tag. I think he's looked good. Reeves has been saying this for a long time, and I agree with him that I think Marshawn Lynch has looked good. All the RBs that I want to play are not on the main slate. Le'Veon, I want to play him on Monday night. I don't want Monday night game for RBs, but Le'Veon is really who I want.
Okay. I'm just going to play devil's advocate really quick with Marshawn Lynch, okay? This is a guy who they've essentially just been not giving any touches to all year. Last week, they gave him 26 touches. Do you really think they come back a week later and give him another 20-plus touches?
They should.
I don't know.
I know they should, but I don't know if they will. I mean, if they're up big in this game, they're not going to give him the garbage time. They're going to give it to, Jalen Richard or DeAndre Washington. Right?
They were up 21 last week.
What?
They were up 21 last week, and he was still getting touches.
I just don't see a way they run this.
Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington are not like garbage time, clock killing, put the ball in their belly type backs.
Yeah, I get it. I just keep looking at this, and I keep saying that, are they going to give him this many carries 2 weeks in a row when they've protected him all year?
I don't know why they wouldn't. Why wouldn't they?
I mean, they might not. I mean, we've kind of reached the point of if they were saving him for anything, like this would be the run.
This would be the run.
But will they? I mean, it's a valid question to ask because every time we've thought like they should start to turn the corner, it was a spot to play him. They've ultimately given him like 14 touches. But I mean, he's had 2 of his best 3 games since he came back from that 1-game suspension. I mean, he was really good against the Dolphins. And then just didn't really get touches again the following week. And then last week got a bunch of touches. And he wasn't even that good at his touches because, Denver is a pretty good run defense. They just kept giving him the rock and he found the paint. I mean, this is a much softer matchup. It's at home. I mean, a lot makes sense. Like I said, there's no running backs in play here. The passing volume is probably going to be there. But, I mean, he's not a dude you're going to play in cash. I mean,
it's a weird running back week. Like we said, there are a lot of –
It is, man. The main slate running backs
who else are you going to play in cash, Reeves, at RB?
Kareem Hunt.
Well, I was going to want to play – I was going to want to play Jamal Williams for a little bit. That's not going to happen.
Well, what about
I was willing to stoop to Alex Collins.
Oh God, how do you know what's going to happen in that Baltimore running situation?
I mean, he's been getting the rock.
That's another thing that started to, reveal itself as well the past 2 weeks. But I mean, Jordan Howard, he's just like the thing that Jordan Howard's in a great spot. The thing that I struggle with this week, especially in the main slate, is all the guys I like don't fit the archetype of guys I like to play in DFS. Like Jordan Howard is like, remember a few weeks ago when we had the conversation when he played the Packers and was a home favorite, like he's just not the archetype of running back I like to play because he's not involved in the passing game at all. 88% of his fantasy production is just rushing alone. He did, he finally got some targets last week. Evan kept dropping the thing that he hadn't been targeted in like 5 weeks. He did get 2 targets. He only had 6 rushing yards. He's going to get that this week. But I mean, it stinks because I like him. I like the matchup, but it's like I hate paying $7,500 or $6,500 for a guy that is just one dimensional and is relying on specific game script to score. I mean, I think that those things are going to happen this week, and they have a high probability of happening. I hate that he's just not the archetype of guy I like to play. It drives me crazy.
And I'll tell you what, there's an archetypical guy that I think that all of us like to play. And here's 2 of them: guys that catch passes and guys that are good at football. Evan, I'm going to throw out a couple guys. One, he's not that good at football, in Melvin Gordon, but he's a 14-point favorite. 2, another guy that doesn't catch passes, Leonard Fournette at home, another big favorite at home against the Colts defense that isn't good. This is where we're at, by the way.
I broke my rule of not playing Melvin Gordon on Thanksgiving.
It was the curse.
That
you
went
cursed
well.
it.
Well, I wish you would have told me that.
I think I did mention that. I think I did mention that.
You did. I'm just messing with you.
The problem with Gordon is he's lost the dual usage. Like, that's the killer, man, because he's never been an efficient runner over the past 2 years, but he just would get peppered with, he'd catch 7 passes a game and was getting all this passing game work, and he's running 13.8 routes per game now over the past 5 weeks because, Eckler's kind of shaved that off. It is a good spot. The Browns, since they lost Agba, and I don't want to directly call it might not even be directly related to Agba. It could just be
they lost Agba and Jamie Collins.
Yeah, and I don't even want to – they've lost those guys, and they've also, it could just be catching up to them, but they've just faced, a mountain of, rushing opportunity because they've been in such negative game script. It could just all be catching up at this point of the year because Joe Mixon last week, the Bengals were the worst rushing team in the NFL, and last week they ran all over the Browns. Mixon looked amazing. So, I mean, Gordon, even without the passing game work, is in a good spot. The rushing volume has still been there. It's just that he hasn't been able to take those games like last week where you rush 20 times for 65 yards and then you add, 6 for 40. And now it turns into oh man, I got over, 100 yards from scrimmage and I tacked on all these PPR points. That's what he's lost. But I mean, it could be one of those games where he has just a mountain of rushing volume and is inefficient again. You just hope he finds the end zone. I'm way more on the River side of that matchup, the Rivers, Keenan Allen, hot streak, and then maybe Evans' boy, Hunter Henry. I mean, got to be in play this week. I mean, the Browns.
This is a classic spot where Melvin Gordon just goes nuts against this.
It is
0-11 team, means nothing.
And they lost to the Browns last year.
Still somehow, figures out a way to average 3.1 yards per carry, but scores 3 touchdowns.
It's the troll week.
And you can't convince me it doesn't matter.
Go off and Twitter's going to be ugly on Sunday.
You can't convince me it doesn't matter. I know he wasn't the head coach last year. Anthony Lynn wasn't, but that was the team that they were the team that the Browns beat last year for their one win. There are dudes on that roster that was an embarrassing moment. They ain't gonna let that happen again, man.
Are there any cheap running backs in interest to you? Because I'm looking, and again, I don't like these situations because I never know who's going to get the rock. Evan, this Denver running back situation, Devontae Booker was popular last week.
That's a bad one.
I know, but I'm just trying to find some value because the value at running back's really lacking this week.
Marshawn, dude, 4,800.
Fine, I'll play Mark. You've talked me into it.
McKinnon at 5,100.
I like that game, by the way.
I do too.
That game has really sneaky shootout potential, and literally nobody's talking about it.
Attacking the Falcons with pass catching RBs has been a profitable strategy for multiple years at this point. But yeah, I mean that's who I'd be looking at in terms of guys who are relatively cheap. Marshawn and Jerick McKinnon.
Well,
it's a very difficult slate for RBs. I mean, it's very hard.
Are you into Hyde at all?
Who?
And Carlos Hyde?
I don't know what to expect with this 49ers. Like, I mean, it's Jimmy Garoppolo's coming in to start. Look, I want to like Carlos Hyde. You know, you look at these targets when CJ Beathard is there. Obviously, he's not starting this week. 13 targets last week, just insane. But, Evan, I mean, what do you expect from the San Fran? Because I don't know what to make. I'm just probably avoiding them all. And, you know, if somebody goes off and I lose because of it, way to go. But I don't really want to gamble in that spot.
I really don't either. I mean,
yeah.
It's a mixed bag. We saw Matt Ryan in his first year under Kyle Shanahan, and he was a disaster. I mean, he was going like 16th round in season-long leagues the year that he won MVP. You know, and he had consistently been like, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but he would go like 13th round, and he had consistently been like a top 6-round pick in like almost every other year of his career. You know, which, I mean, season-long drafters are just terrible. You know, taking Matt Ryan as like a 6-round pick. But, I mean, people always thought that, oh, this was going to be the year for Matt Ryan. And then guess what? The year that they were totally off of him, he wound up being the NFL MVP. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't even know what I was talking about there, but I think it had something to do with Kyle Shanahan's. Expecting big things from Jimmy Garoppolo would be that's bold. At Soldier Field, which is a tough place to play. The Bears have a very underrated defense. It's going to be cold, I think. I don't know. It's not too cold here right now, but we'll see. It's usually cold in late November, early December. You know, he is a dude who played at Eastern Illinois, and he's from around here, so he'll be able to handle the weather. He's got nothing around him. I mean, he's got nothing. Yeah. He's got nothing. They have nothing at wide receiver. You know,
we've arrived at the point that you just put all your money in Thursday through Monday and play Le'Veon.
Yeah, I mean, but I'll tell you what, a strategy that's worked for me for years. When I have questions about a position like this, I just pay up. I just find like if I have to pay a little bit extra to get a little bit of safety,
just take that value.
But like when I'm gonna play a lot of Leonard Fournette this week. I already mentioned him. I'm probably gonna play a lot of. I'm going to play plenty of Jordan Howard, and then I'm also going to play plenty of Melvin Gordon. Look, he's a 14-point home favorite. I'm just going to play him. Like, does he suck? Yeah, but I can live with that. I've played worse players than Melvin Gordon, that's for sure. Let's talk about some wide receivers because we talked about how running backs, you know, a little bit thin at the position. Reeves, I don't feel like that's the case at all at wide receiver because I'm looking at Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins. We already talked about Brandon Cooks, but there are a lot of upper tier wide receivers that all seem too cheap for me over on DK.
Yeah, I think it's just in general, the wide receiver pricing on both sites is pretty soft. Like I said, I mean, FanDuel's giving you a couple borderline free squares this week. And Cooper Kupp is super cheap again. I mean, he had a season high 25% of team targets last week in the first game of Woods inactive. His previous season high in targets was the last time they played the Cardinals. I mean, Cardinals have been getting, you know, kind of hurt in the slot, vulnerable slot receivers. So, I mean, it could be a spot for where Kupp just, you know, is that dude again this week, and they're giving up production to quarterback. So a byproduct, if Goff's going to play good, then Kupp's going to play good. So, I mean, he's still in play. I mean, I think that the obvious play, I mean, Hopkins is still way too cheap on both sites for especially what he's walking into. He said 17.6 or more PPR points in all 4 of Tom Savage's starts. And the last 2 have come against Baltimore and Patrick Peterson. You know, and he got over on the Colts, who had been limiting wide receiver one production, even though people want to, you know, scoff at the Colts defense throughout the year, but they shut down wide receiver ones. They've done it all year. So, I mean, not only has he done it with Tom Savage, he's done it in tougher matchups. I mean, that's not going to be the case this week. You know, Tennessee has just been, you know, horrendous. He's also has a tremendous history. Like, if you want to go that route against Houston, against Tennessee, he's absolutely murked them. He's been a wide receiver 1 or higher in 7 and 9 times he's faced them. And they've allowed 14.6 PPR points to every wide receiver 1 they faced, except for T.Y. Hilton twice. Sorry, Evan. And Kenny Britt.
Or T.Y. Boy, you got to get that needle in there, don't you?
That wasn't, you know, that's where the bowling pin was there, man.
It felt like a needle.
It probably did. That's okay.
The only way to get over these things is just to laugh with it. Just go with it, man.
All right, man. I'll take your word for it, Reeves.
I mean, I am with you though. Like DeAndre Hopkins and Mike Evans. I mean, you talk about slam dunks on this slate. Evans,
you don't need to pay for him. Like,
Yeah, they're not even that expensive. I mean, like they're both about $1,000, $1,500 too cheap to me. Evan, what do you think about these two guys?
Oh, just awesome plays. And he mentioned Cup too. I mean, he's a ridiculous play. You know,
He's priced up on DK.
Not really. Not
6,400.
I think he should be a little higher. I really do.
Wow.
I really do. Yeah. I mean, he's likely to get 10 targets. Likely, I think. I mean, all right. So, what do you, Reeves? If you were going to set, I don't know, maybe it'd be 8, maybe like 8.5 for his over under for targets.
Well, he's got what? He's got at least 6 catches in each of the last 3 games.
If you gave me 8.5 with Patrick Peterson on, Sammy Watkins and Robert Woods out, and Josh Reynolds didn't practice today, I think I'm taking the over for sure.
I would go over. Look, if Peterson is shadowing Watkins, like the way that offense operates, they're just they're trying to be Belichickian almost, where they're just doing nothing but attacking weaknesses. So, like, yeah, I'm going to take Cup. Maybe he is too cheap. Maybe 6. Like, it seems weird to say for Cooper Kupp.
It does seem weird
when we've been getting all season, but what you're saying makes sense.
The thing is, he turned 24 in June. He should be like 3 years in the league already. You know, so we think of him as a rookie. He's very advanced. And I mean,
which is not uncommon. Which is not uncommon for the older prospects that typically hit are guys from small schools that don't have the opportunity to go pro. The John Browns of the world, guys like that. They're usually stuck at smaller schools and don't have the opportunity to leave college early. Those are the guys that typically are the prospects that hit. And I'm not going to say Kupp is like this magical fantasy entity, but I mean, he is in a great spot. He's been consistent all year. He leads the team in red zone targets. He's in the matchup dictates that the targets are going to come to him. Robert Woods being out dictates targets are going to come to him. It's just one of those things, man. It's all there.
He saw a couple more end zone targets last week too, by the way. I mean, he's everywhere, man. Robbie Anderson. So, I wasn't on him enough last week. I was worried about like how the Panthers had just limited teams' big plays. I didn't think the Jets would perform well in that game, period, against the Panthers defense. Boy, was I wrong. We've been on Robbie Anderson like every week, other than that. And now he gets another great matchup against the Chiefs, who have given up the 5th most yards and a league high 16 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers. Marcus Peters has been bad lately, over 100 passer rating allowed in each of his last 3 games. And Robbie Anderson runs 60% of his routes away from Marcus Peters' side of the field anyway. So he's going to stay hot. You know how sometimes we'll have like these years where like, it was like Ted Ginn and Doug Baldwin, would just stay hot for like, this huge stretch, and you would be like, this is going to end, right? This is going to end, and you just get hit by it every single week, I think Robbie Anderson he's a candidate to be that kind of a player, and his started early. I mean, he's on like a 5-game touchdown streak right now.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
And he's just really good at, catching the ball in traffic. Like, he's a good wideout. I wanted to ask you, Evan, what do we think is going to happen with Desmond Trufant this week? Do we think he plays? Because if not, Stephon Diggs is going to be 5% and is in a heck of a good spot.
Yeah. So concussion stuff is a little difficult to predict.
Okay.
Vaughn McClure, who you should be following on Twitter, of ESPN he's the ESPN Falcons reporter. He's excellent. He always has a very good read on what is going to happen with the Falcons. Like, he was way out in front of everybody that Devonta Freeman was going to miss like significant time with his concussion. He's a guy to follow. But right now, if I had to guess, I would guess that Desmond Trufant does not play.
Well, if that happens, then to me, Stephon Diggs is one of my favorite plays in the entire slate because, again, nobody's going to play him. By the way, cheap running back, Freeman, that's the guy. Oh, you guys are no fun. All right, we got to get off it. We have gone way over time, and I know the D-Train is sitting there saying, guys, we got to go. Anyways, guys, it has been a lot of fun. Let's kick some butt this week. I'm ready. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to RotoGrinders DFS Picks, or RotoWorld DFS Pick 6 presented by RotoGrinders. Thanks, Rich Rebar. Thanks, Evan Silva. I'm Eric Crane. We'll see you guys later. Peace.